At the time, Ian Fleming's James Bond novels were already popular, but many doubted they would translate to the silver screen. Producer Albert R. Cubby Broccoli and his partner Harry Saltzman took a risk, betting audiences would embrace a charismatic, larger-than-life secret agent. Few realized just how influential Dr. No would become, spawning decades of sleek action, globe-trotting adventure, and endless debate about the best Bond actor. Whether you're a devoted Bond buff or a casual fan, the story behind Dr. No is filled with fascinating twists, larger-than-life personalities, and a dash of the unexpected. Here are 30 behind-the-scenes facts that illuminate how it all began. 1. Connery replaced Grant. When producer Harry Saltzman and Albert R. Cubby Broccoli set out to adapt Ian Fleming's novels, Cary Grant was among the first actors they approached. But he only wanted a single-picture commitment, and the producers needed someone they could build an ongoing series around. Reluctantly, they let Grant slip away. They turned instead to a relatively unknown Scot named Sean Connery, whose screen presence was undeniable, though his background was far from the upper-crust sophistication you'd expect of '07. At the time, it felt like a gamble. They had no idea they were about to change cinematic history. 2. Fleming doubted Connery, then embraced him. Even Ian Fleming wasn't initially sold on Connery. Fleming had pictured someone more refined, maybe David Niven. When he heard they'd cast an ex-milkman and part-time model with a rugged edge, he reportedly called Connery an overgrown stuntman. Not exactly a glowing endorsement. Over time, though, Fleming grew to appreciate the roguish appeal Connery brought. After visiting the set and seeing how women swooned over Connery's charm, he even tweaked Bond's literary backstory, giving him a Scottish heritage in later novels to align more with Connery's reality. That pivot from rejection to acceptance underscores how surprising it was for everyone that this brash newcomer could embody Bond's lethal finesse. $3.1 million budget sparked creative solutions. The film's budget hovered around $1 million, a modest sum, especially for a globe-trotting espionage tale. Yet Dr. No had to lay the foundation for all future Bond installments. The producers, pressed for funds, leaned on creative solutions like reusing sets or filming in cheaper locations. Many scenes were shot in Jamaica or on small sets at Pinewood Studios, where the art department pulled off miracles of thrift. They might build a partial hallway, shoot from strategic angles, and voila, it became a cavernous lair. This frugal approach was risky, but it forced them to rely on style and atmosphere rather than showy extravagance. 4. Andress's bikini entrance redefined Bond girls. One of the most iconic scenes is Ursula Andress's emergence from the sea, sporting a now-famous white bikini. That entire moment was a late addition. Originally, her introduction was simpler. She'd be spotted collecting seashells. But director Terence Young pushed for a striking, sensual arrival, having her step out of the water singing "Underneath the Mango Tree." This changed everything. The combination of her tanned figure against the sunlit shore basically redefined what a Bond girl could be. Andress's honey-toned entrance quickly became one of cinema's most memorable reveals. Fans and critics often compare it to Botticelli's The Birth of Venus, though with a sultrier 1960s twist. 5. Bikini became global fashion statement. That bikini turned into a global fashion statement, setting off a wave of beachwear trends. Back in 1962, women's swimwear was still fairly conservative, so seeing Andress in a minimal white two-piece was borderline scandalous. Yet it looked so natural and confident, it essentially sparked a revolution in beach fashion. Fast forward to decades later, a version of that bikini sold at auction for a hefty sum, proving it's not just a piece of cloth, it's cinematic history. That interplay between scandal and style has echoed throughout every subsequent Bond film. Sixth Hurricanes delayed Jamaica shoot. The production wasn't all sun-kissed beaches. Jamaica's hurricane season threw in real complications. Storms battered the area, delaying shoots by days. Some exterior sets, precariously built near shorelines, took heavy damage from wind and rain. Crew members scrambled to salvage props and rebuild destroyed sections. Producer Cubby Broccoli joked that if they survived Jamaican weather, they could handle any future Bond challenges. In a weird way, those obstacles bonded the team, giving them the unstoppable can-do spirit that future Bond shoots would also require. 7. Wiseman stayed in character off-set. Joseph Wiseman portrayed Dr. Julius No, the first Bond villain in the series. Off-camera, Wiseman rarely socialized with the cast. He believed that Dr. No's eerie detachment should carry over to real life. By keeping to himself, Wiseman hoped the cast would feel naturally uneasy around him. And it worked. Sean Connery once said that whenever Wiseman strolled by with his imposing posture, he got chills, even though, rationally, he knew it was just an actor in a fancy suit. That method-like approach added a layer of authenticity to Dr. No's aloof menace. 8. Director Young refined Connery's manners. Director Terence Young was basically Connery's mentor in the ways of Bond. He taught him to walk, talk, and even dine like a refined gentleman. The story goes that Young once hauled Connery to his personal tailor for fittings, lecturing him on the importance of wearing suits with confidence. He also introduced Connery to fine dining, ensuring that James Bond's taste for caviar and champagne wouldn't come off as forced. By the end, you might say Connery left the shoot with more real-life sophistication than he arrived with. 9M's office set was built last minute. M's office, featuring actor Bernard Lee as the no-nonsense MI6 chief, was tossed together in a hurry. It had mismatched chairs and a cluttered desk, ironically giving it a sense of bureaucratic authenticity. The producers originally fretted about the unpolished look, but once they saw the footage, they realized it was perfect. M's domain felt lived-in and official, not like a shiny new set. Audiences rarely notice details like that, but for the crew, it was a lesson in how last-minute solutions can sometimes surpass planned design. 10. British humor was carefully balanced. Network executives worried that Americans wouldn't latch onto British humor or style, so they toned down certain too-English references. Yet they kept enough witty banter to set Bond apart from typical American action heroes. This balancing act laid the groundwork for a global brand, polite, polished, but always with a sly wink. The bet paid off. Audiences found the Britishness novel and refreshing. 11. Barry reshaped Norman's Bond theme. Monty Norman composed the original score, including the basis for the now iconic Bond theme. But John Barry was brought in to orchestrate it in a more dynamic way, creating the surf guitar-driven tune we all recognize. Then came disputes over who deserved credit. Monty Norman insisted the melody was his. Barry argued he'd rearranged it extensively. They fought it out for years in legal battles over royalties. Regardless, the outcome is one of the most recognizable themes in cinema, conjuring visions of tuxedos and espionage wherever it plays. 12. Miss Taro's accent added comic flair. Zena Marshall, who played the suspicious Miss Taro, had to adopt a comedic accent. She practiced flipping in and out of it for maximum comedic effect. After filming, she joked that she learned more Jamaican slang from local extras than from any official dialect coach. Miss Taro's scenes, while brief, gave Dr. No a hint of comedic interplay between Bond and a minor antagonist. 13. Underwater shots filmed in real reefs. Those underwater shots took place in actual Jamaican reefs. Sean Connery and stunt doubles trudged through real coral, mindful of sea urchins and jellyfish. One day, the weather changed unexpectedly, churning up silt. Visibility went to zero, which ironically added a murkiness that heightened the scene's tension. Only after filming did the crew realize they'd captured an authentic sense of underwater peril. 14. Maxwell originally auditioned for Sylvia Trench. Lois Maxwell, who played the beloved Miss Moneypenny, initially auditioned for the part of Sylvia Trench, Bond's casual love interest. But Terence Young felt she lacked the sultriness needed for Sylvia. Instead, he offered her Moneypenny, envisioning that warm rapport with Bond that would carry on for decades. Maxwell accepted, setting the stage for one of the franchise's most endearing running gags, Bond and Moneypenny's playful flirtations. 15. Connery did his own stunts. Connery insisted on doing many of his own stunts, including the final scuffles with Dr. No's henchmen. He ended up with bruises and scrapes to prove it, impressing both crew and critics. This physical commitment ensured that viewers saw Bond not as a pampered spy, but as a tough fighter. Later, Bond actors also performed stunts, but Connery's legacy loomed large. The bar was set for physical authenticity from day one. 16. Locals appeared as extras. Accidents happened. The team hired local Jamaican residents as extras to fill out bustling marketplace scenes or crowd shots. Many had never acted. One fisherman forgot he was supposed to stay in character and waved jovially at Connery, turning a tense spy scene into an unintentional outtake. The director found it both charming and frustrating, capturing the sense of on-the-fly production that shaped the film's final look. 17. Tarantula scene scared real Connery. The tarantula scene remains a highlight of Dr. No's tension. In real life, Connery was terrified of spiders. He insisted on a pane of glass between him and the tarantula for certain shots. A stunt double handled the up-close moments with the spider creeping across Bond's bare chest. Even with protective measures, the crew recalled Connery's uneasy jokes about quitting if any spider scenes went awry. 18. Pacing was slow, but tension worked. Some producers worried the pace was too slow. Bond moves from casual scene to scene, investigating clues before the big confrontation. Terence Young championed a methodical build, asserting it would set the style for future installments. He believed that sense of slow burn, revealing Dr. No's lair piece by piece, was crucial. If everything rushed, the tension might evaporate. Eventually, the producers relented, and Young got the methodical tension he wanted. 19. Fleming warmed up after visiting set. Ian Fleming himself visited the Jamaican set, curious about how these Hollywood folks would interpret his beloved character. Upon meeting Connery in costume, Fleming was reportedly won over by the actor's magnetism. Fleming's diaries mention seeing a commanding presence, if a bit unpolished, recognizing it was what Bond needed. From that day on, Fleming softened his stance. He even grew proud of how Dr. No introduced his espionage world to a wider audience. 20. Censors trimmed scenes for UK rating. The film nearly snagged an X rating in Britain due to the innuendo and glimpses of partial nudity. After mild trimming, like removing a few seconds from Bond's bed scene with Miss Taro, the censors granted a more accessible rating. This mild controversy only fueled public interest, as 1960s audiences were curious about a racy spy film. In truth, Dr. No is fairly tame by modern standards, but back then it was borderline scandalous to show a lethal hero sharing witty pillow talk. 21. Connery's humor boosted set morale. On set, Connery had a playful sense of humor, often cracking jokes with the crew. He'd poke fun at his own lines or do an exaggerated version of Bond's swagger. People say these comedic breaks helped maintain morale during punishing shoot days, especially in the heat or unpredictable Jamaican downpours. The cast needed those laughs. Even Joseph Wiseman's stony Dr. No facade would sometimes crack at Connery's remarks, briefly. 22nd. Ken Adams' lair design became iconic. Production designer Ken Adam devised minimalist yet striking sets for Dr. No's lair. Think geometrically angled rooms, hidden lighting sources, and a huge aquarium. Working on a tight budget, Adam used forced perspective to make the villain's hideout appear vast. This style, all shiny floors and looming angles, would influence the aesthetic of subsequent Bond films, forging that iconic mix of futuristic danger and decadent villainy. 23. Andress's voice was dubbed in post. Although Ursula Andress's presence is unforgettable, her lines were actually dubbed by voice actress Nikki van der Zyl. The producers felt Andress's accent was too strong, worried that American audiences might struggle with her real voice. This practice of dubbing would continue in early Bond films for numerous Bond girls. Andress didn't mind, understanding that Hollywood often ADR'd lines to standardize accents. 24. Dr. No's hands added subtle comedy. One comedic highlight is the dinner scene with Dr. No, where mechanical hands fidget with silverware. Joseph Wiseman practiced holding utensils in a bizarrely stiff manner, implying that Dr. No's artificial hands lacked normal dexterity. It added a subtle hint of comedic surreality, like this menacing villain can't quite manage everyday tasks. The audience realized how inhuman Dr. No had become, physically and psychologically. 25. Reactor finale was filmed in real heat. The final act, with Bond trapped in Dr. No's nuclear reactor chamber, was filmed in a hurry. The Jamaican storms delayed earlier scenes, so they had to condense the climax's schedule. The nuclear set was unbearably hot under intense studio lights. Actors nearly fainted from the heat, sweat pouring from under their costumes. The tension you see on screen wasn't all acting. Some of it was exhaustion. If you look closely, you can spot the glisten of real perspiration, adding authenticity. 26. Explosion went bigger than expected. The concluding explosion used real pyrotechnics, almost bigger than planned. The blasts soared higher than the crew estimated, scorching the edges of camera equipment and blowing out some windows of a nearby set. From that fiasco on, the team took extra caution with Bond film explosions, instituting stricter safety measures. But the spectacle looked fantastic on screen, ending Dr. No with a literal bang that had become a Bond trademark. 27 UK hit, sequel greenlit fast. Upon its UK premiere, some critics dismissed Dr. No as too violent and flippant, though the public lapped it up. The box office success was so strong that it quickly demanded a sequel, leading to From Russia with Love. The formula was set. Combine exotic locations, a charismatic lead, gorgeous women, a memorable villain, and that sly sense of humor. Dr. No had proved the concept. The rest of the 1960s would see Bond mania explode around the globe. 28 U.S. fans came later after re-release. When it finally reached American theaters, Dr. No performed decently at first, but it was the re-release after From Russia with Love that made U.S. audiences go wild for Bond. Suddenly, talk of License to Kill and Martini's Shaken, Not Stirred was everywhere. Merchandise deals, tie-in products, and the unstoppable wave of pop culture references were born. The film had soared from a small gamble to a phenomenon in just a couple of years. 29. Critics now hail it as iconic start. Over the decades, critics came to see Dr. No as more than a mere starting point. It introduced so many Bond staples, the casual wit, the glamorous women, the sinister lair. Without it, we might never have had the unstoppable phenomenon of 007, with each subsequent actor adding their spin to the role. Meanwhile, fans revisit Dr. No to see Bond's roots, A simpler time, sure, but already loaded with the style and tension that define the series. 30. Bond DNA began with Connery's smirk. Today, it's hard to imagine a cinematic landscape without James Bond. Dr. No laid the foundation, establishing the gun barrel opening, the comedic yet deadly flirtation with danger, and the unwavering confidence that no matter how big the baddies' scheme, Bond would find a way to prevail. Even though budgets and scope soared in later films, the seeds were planted in 1962's Jamaican beaches and cramped pinewood sets. So much of Bond's DNA, his cunning, his magnetism, his cold gleam of danger, came to life for the first time in that small-scale production. For fans, that pioneering spirit makes Dr. No endlessly rewatchable. Indeed, the moment Sean Connery utters "Bond, James Bond" with that slight smirk, cinema is forever changed. In the end, Dr. No wasn't just a spy film, it was an audacious gamble that launched a cinematic icon. It showcased that a cool, confident hero, armed with sophistication and a Walther PPK, could enthrall audiences worldwide. And it taught Hollywood a lesson about trusting fresh ideas, even when the odds seem stacked. So the next time you hear those opening bars of the Bond theme, think of how close we came to losing that tune forever, and how, if not for a few bold choices, the entire landscape of action cinema might look very different today. Because sometimes one daring leap into the unknown can ignite a legacy that endures for 60 years and beyond.